I don't know about you, but I always feel like I'm in such a rush, not the good kind, to get somewhere, to be someone or something. Don't know exactly what though. Trying to reach an ever receding point, kind of like a horse chasing after a carrot tied to its forehead, but it's like this mystery carrot. Look, the carrot here is very heavy with symbolism, okay? So what's the rush? An obvious culprit or factor that comes to mind right away is our painfully unique awareness of the passage of time and our imminent demise. It's kind of part of the deal with being human. The fact that with every second that elapses, with each and every breath we take, it's one step closer to oblivion. Just feeling how our potential swiftly deflates like an abused bounce house at an unsupervised children's party. Speaking of children, well, when we're kids, when we're all wee lads and lasses, we're basically pure potential. Around us, golden horizons glimmering with almost endless possibilities. As we grow older, that potential becomes narrower and narrower and narrower. We sacrifice some things over others with each and every decision we make, which then also branch out into multiple worlds, but that's completely besides the point. Now, don't know about you, but this notion leaves me petrified. I just want to do and be and experience so much in such limited time. I mean, where do you even start? I just wind up feeling that by not wanting to waste time, I end up losing it. Paralyzed, standing still at an infinite crossroads while the floor sinks steadily beneath my feet like merciless quicksand. Then another factor, which also happens to be uniquely human, a powerful thing called imagination, which is a blessing and a curse. See, we've been granted the ability to model and project ourselves into future scenarios, mixing and matching previous data to generate an infinitude of possible outcomes and proposals. Which is cool and all, don't get me wrong. Only problem is we often get too carried away and overly attached to these fantasies, failing to recognize them for what they are. Then, before we know it, we're caught in the almost unstoppable rapids of thought, overthinking, plowing us down with tidal force, leaving us rolling under like a useless log. Then when we finally snap back to reality, boom, we're immediately overwhelmed by the gaping chasm that lies between what is and what we'd like it to be, next to that incessant and all too familiar ticking clock. It's especially frustrating when you get too excited too fast, like me, blasting through the vast and lush landscape of possibilities at breakneck speed. The more vivid the fantasy, the harder the impact when we come crashing down to the solid present. Now, in all this running around like a headless chicken, have you stopped to ask yourself why the rush? I mean, why is it that we're chasing this mystery carrot in the first place? And where did this motherfucking carrot even come from? I feel that big part of this pressure of chasing after an ideal or presumption of who we think we should be, what we think we should be doing, where we think we should be at by now, all stem from these ideas that have been filtered into our subconscious narrative without our consent, contaminated by our surrounding socio-political, cultural, religious, familiar, etc. context. I don't know, but some of society's standards around certain subjects are kind of counterproductive and quite frankly outdated.
Upon my word, you give your opinion very decidedly for so young a person.
Don't get me wrong. I do think it's essential to have some sort of North Star with which to align ourselves with. But how much of that comes from an honest place of curiosity and inner yearning? And how much of it has been muddled or influenced by external values or social pressures? Society's idea of a happy life is everybody's and nobody's. Being patient is even harder when we compare ourselves, especially now that we have the internet and social media, which give us an obscene amount of points of comparison, lifestyles, opinions, success metrics, etc. There's just so much noise, which is why I love this quote by Professor Jordan Peterson, which I turn to every time that I'm in doubt, which is very often. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. I won't really get into it, but it's completely useless to try to compare yourself to someone else. It's just such a vastly different configuration of factors and set of events uniquely lined up to make up who each person is today that it's completely nonsensical to try to make comparisons because you won't draw any sort of useful or productive data from that. It only produces a bunch of anxiety, so just stop. There are many expressions of impatience, whether it's waiting for a friend or being stuck in traffic or trying to explain something to someone who just doesn't seem to be getting it, growing a following or gaining a new skill, and they all have at least this one thing in common, which is a temporal disconnect. In general, impatience has to do with not accepting the present actual situation. It's a lack of acceptance of what is. Now, this does not equate to complacency or lethargy or apathy, which can all be deceivingly destructive. It's simply about recognizing that what is what is, and upon that awareness to make conscious strides. We need to keep ourselves focused and motivated. The challenge being the focused and motivated part. I mean, it's hard to be patient when we don't know what we're being patient for. Which is why the best thing to do then is to have a nice long talk with ourselves and ask yourself good questions. What excites you, really? What are you genuinely curious about? What do you value and why? Where do those values come from? So with that in mind, it's extremely useful to try shit mindfully and see how it actually makes us feel. Experiment. Play around, because we do have a limited time. It is true that we can only do so many things, which is why we need to prioritize. And to prioritize, we need to know what's important in our lives. And to know what's important in our lives, we need to know what our values are and why. Then we can set manageable goals that will evolve and change as we grow and develop who we are further. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and then another, and another, and another, and another. It really is just about the stepping part. So we should really get good at stepping. The 1,000 miles thing is a side effect. It's a distraction. We should focus on the steps because that's all there really is. The key to patience is in understanding that we are not waiting for anything. It's the difference between preparation, which is an active and ongoing process, and expectation, which is passive and ultimately bound to disappoint. Keyword process, not outcome. We're always looking for an outcome when life is a process. Here are some tools that I've personally found to be very helpful. Número 1. Meditation. Break the spell. I will not get tired of saying it ever. Being able to readjust our relationship with ourselves and our thoughts is crucial. Something more valuable than our time is our focus, which determines how we spend that time. And meditation is a great tool for helping us exercise just that. Next, there's this book that I would like to recommend. It's very short and it actually is very practical and helpful. It's called The Dip by Seth Godin, which basically talks about knowing when to quit and when to stick. And if you're gonna quit fast, and if you're gonna stick it out, And now, if you're anything like me, there's this fear of wasting time trying something out when you should have been maybe trying something else out. And at the same time, we know that if you don't give something enough time and attention to grow, then you won't really see the fruits of whatever it is that you were trying. A good remedy for that is this thing called the 3-year rule. Now, Matt D'Avella actually goes into great detail in one of his videos, link to it in the description. But in essence, it's basically setting a time frame, whether it's 3 years or 6 months or 6 years, in which you will wholeheartedly focus and try whatever it is that you're curious about. And then when you reach that mark, you'll reassess, see how you're feeling, how you're doing, and whether you keep on doing it or pivot and try something else. And lastly, there's this exercise that I have used, and it's actually helped me quite a bit. I've already come across it now through different courses and people that say the same thing, so apparently it's pretty effective. Write a list, and when they say write it. Don't keep it in your head, whether it's on paper or type it, but write it down. From 25 to 30 things that you're genuinely curious about. It doesn't matter if it's the most random thing. It can be soap making, honey, quantum physics, psychology, snorkeling, whatever. And then similarly, write another list of 25 to 30 things that you're good at. Now, obviously it's easier to lose objectivity in the second one, so try to find someone who you think would be objective and who cares for you, maybe a family member or close friend, and ask them to help you out. After that, pick 5 things from each list and try different combinations between them and see what comes up. Again, experimenting, trying things out, is very important. Por último, whether we like it or not, the only moment there is this moment. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. We have vivid memories of what was and can imagine in great detail what might be. But we are and always will be here and now until we are not. If we're able to really be aware of this moment, coupled with understanding why we want what we want, guided by our genuine curiosity, we can better steer our lives and take conscious actions at every moment that'll get us one step closer to our goals and aspirations.